Welcome to NASET's November webinar. If you're new to NASET, our members enjoy free access to webinars like this one, along with exclusive resources, expert-led sessions, and discounts on continuing education programs.
So we're going to get started. Our topic today, the top 5 critical practices that every special educator needs to master. The idea here is that we chose to highlight these areas because if you focus on these 5 areas, we believe it will shift your practice in a positive way. We're going to start with the first one. We want you to recognize that behavior is a form of communication. Every action, every verbal, every nonverbal interaction we have is a form of communication. Behavior can be verbal or nonverbal. It serves 4 functions. First one is escape, to get away from something. We've seen students try to escape from academic situations, from uncomfortable social situations, and we have to try to figure out what's going on.
Next function, which really is a big one, that's attention. Seeking attention is a natural thing for people to do. And so for some of our students, they will seek attention no matter whether it's positive or negative response, because the power of getting some response is so enticing that it's worth it. And sometimes the bigger the response feels better, faster than the slower kind of hard work of delaying getting attention.
Yeah, I would say that probably mirrors the tangible. So we see over time that a behavior or an action can sometimes be more effective in getting a specific item, toy, food, like some tangible item, and it can be much quicker than raising your hand, waiting patiently for the teacher's attention or for someone else's attention. And then students do get into patterns where they are finding that it's more efficient to act a certain way, and they will get what they want faster by doing an action. The last behavior is sensory seeking, a pain reaction. Sometimes a student is unable to communicate effectively and like their tooth hurts really, really badly. And so they may bite or chew or do something that's maladaptive to demonstrate that. That's trickier to identify because it may be a very acute, 1 or 2 day situation where some of these other behaviors that we're talking about could be like long-standing patterns. We want to make sure that we are supporting our teams and our parents and the people around us who are especially dealing with behavior like over and over and over again, to sort of change their perspectives. Our example here is this student is manipulative. And really what we want to say is this student is highly skilled at getting their needs met. And so can we turn that positive into something else and use that as like a launching point to have more effective, appropriate, expected communication going forward? So understanding what the student's communicating, teaching the replacement skill, etc.
The discipline framework, which is really focusing on understanding what your state's discipline laws are and how they're applied in your school buildings across the board to all different kids. And so a key component is that discipline is not meant to be punishment. So one of my favorite expressions is education is a right and not a privilege. Clearly bleeds into whether you can discipline a student or not, because discipline has to have due process attached to it. Every state in the union and Washington, D.C. has discipline laws on the books. And the question is, how much do they rely on actually suspension? How much has the legislature decided that they're going to focus on restorative and instructional practices? How much they're going to insist that you do those first? And then those regulations and statutes also will mandate how schools track the data and address disparities. With the understanding that every state has statutes and regulations, the question becomes sort of what is the guidepost for when a school can implement discipline? And that is that all discipline has to be tied to the handbook.
There's kind of a myth out there that compliance to our rules and regulations is like a bad thing or a terrible thing. Compliance is actually kind of the grease that keeps the whole system operating. And so it's very, very important because the compliance pieces are in there for a reason and a purpose. So, what we think about when we're talking about compliance is it's non-negotiable. And that the law asks us to try to always give parents notice of what we are thinking what we're proposing, what we're not proposing, what we considered, what we decided to not do, but what we are finally proposing as the district's IEP. Sometimes our parental notice documents are really formulaic and kind of boring, and they're like the best opportunity to state the district's reasoning for why it's proposing what it's proposing. And so notice is just super key, and it's the first link in this big chain of compliance in terms of timelines, paperwork, no matter what state you're in, and adhering to the regulations.
We want to help people, especially when there are disputes or questions about progress, questions about FAPE. We want to move from opinions to data and fact-based measures, and data protects everyone. Words certainly communicate something, but data that you can hopefully even represent visually over time communicates much more effectively. And we want to make sure that we're communicating progress clearly, especially for those situations where there's a dispute or a question about an intervention, or we are all worried about a certain skill, or a parent is really, really questioning, like what a team is doing. Kind of stripping out the emotion and presenting data makes a lot of sense and usually helps diffuse the situation, especially if the data is going in the right direction. A lot of opportunity for connection and conflict over time, because it would be crazy to have a relationship with someone for 21 years and not have a conflict. So, in the context of that long of a relationship with some families, it is important to think about it in a long-term manner.
The relationship for a special education team, the players on the school side may change, but for that family, their relationship with the district is continuous.
Yeah.
But the reality is that the relationships that you're building go through stages, and people have to earn trust. Parents need to see over time that we're consistent, that we say what we say, we do what we say we're going to do, and that over time you can kind of build up trust, and then you have something to work with together. Sometimes when you're really in debate and conflict, that's a sign you're doing something right. Sometimes we're talking about things that take a while to get to agreement on. People have good reasons for why they might disagree on the rate of progress, or if a particular approach is appropriate or not. And that may not be something you can convince someone out of in a single conversation. My real goal as a special ed director was always to get to the point where we were building the agendas for team meetings together with families, and everybody had a stake in that meeting happening successfully. You can get there. It takes a lot of hard work on. The number one thing that I've found over the years is that not being defensive and really hearing what people are saying. I think that makes it better, because on some level, you're signaling to a family that you really care about their student. And that's the most important thing, right? People don't sue a school district if their child's happy and making progress.